Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, and this is my story. I grew up as a young boy with a lot of faith. I had a grandma that set me in her lap when I was young, and she would tell me about David and Daniel and slaying the giant and, you know, killing the bear and the lion. And you know, I can remember that even at 2 and 3 years old, how that made such a big deal in my life. And one of the stories that I tell to start off this testimony is, you know, when I was going to be a freshman at a new school, and my dad, my two brothers, my grandpa and his brother-in-law all were going to get their heads buzzed off. And I was the last one, and I took off running to the barn, and I stayed there till dark, till my mom was cutting all the hair. But I say God had a sense of humor, you know, because I don't have an ounce of hair. I never had any chemo. It just about a month ago, it fell out. And man, I was just really torn up about it at first. But, you know, God, I would rather have a healed head and a bald head than to have a sick head and hair. So December the 5th, 2021, my wife takes me to the emergency room, and they do an MRI on my brain, and they come back and tell us in a very rude way, I thought, that you have a brain tumor, and we're gonna send you to Lubbock, or we're gonna send you to Dallas. And so the next morning, they shipped us by ambulance to Dallas. They told us there at Dallas, they said, you need to go find an oncologist as soon as you can. And you know, my personality is, I'm always in a hurry, and I want to get things done. So we found an oncologist there in Midland, and we went in and talked to him, and he said, you know, this cancer's growing at 95% growth rate. He told us there's really nothing we can do for you. We can take you to MD Anderson, but said they're gonna have to raise the chemo so high in your body, and your brain has a barrier over it, so it's a protecting from anything in your body. But in order for chemo to get to that spot, it's got to be raised so high it's just going to burn all your organs up. And I just told him right there, I said, I'm not going to die like that. I'd heard my friend, he got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And so I'd heard that he was in Mexico getting treatment. So I called him, and he picked right up. I couldn't believe it, but you know, we cried together. He was down in Cancun, Mexico, getting treatments, and I just, you know, he was telling me a little bit about it, and I just come out and asked him. I said, Rick, is that something for me? And he said, Brett, I'm not going to say it's for you, but it's for me. And so Shay and I went home, and we studied on the internet, and we made an appointment. On January the 5th, we were in Tijuana getting treatment. So I never will forget, maybe the third day we were there, I was still pretty weak, and I was up in the bed. I mean, it was probably 7 o'clock at night, and this man come from down the road. He had a little ministry in his house, but he would come up there and lead worship. And my wife, she went down and got water, and she was come back up. She goes, man, they're having really good worship down there. You think you feel like going? I said, I don't. But the Lord just urged me to get up and just go down there and see what it was about. But it was the sweetest worship that I'd ever been in. I mean, just the Lord was just speaking to me, and I was just crying. And just this morning in my Bible study, it was about how Jehoshaphat and his little army went against 3 armies, but they put the worship team up front. And, you know, the 3 enemies were defeated. When you have cancer, it is a big enemy. And I think worship's a big part of your healing process there. But like 2 days before we left, they were doing IVs to get my IV stuff in me. But the 2 days before we left, they stuck one in my arm right here. And when I left there, it was like about that big. And I remember we had trouble finding that vein. But when I got home, you know, after a week, 10 days, it was good. And I didn't even think anything else about it. So I worked cutting horses at night, and I love cutting horses, and it's what gets me away from my work. I'd been home 5 weeks, and my back was just killing me. And I never will forget the last night before this event. I got on a horse. I had one of my guys, Epi, to help me get up there, and I took about 2 steps. I said, you gotta get me off of here. I can't do it. And so he helped me off, and we went to the house. Shay put me to bed. The next morning, I couldn't even get out of bed. I mean, my back was hurting so bad. My wife calls my son-in-law, Sam, and they come over and put me in the car and take me to the hospital. And they do an MRI. Well, my whole spine is full of infection. I never will forget this part. My pastor, Pastor Ed, and a really good friend of mine that I went to high school with, Chris Robertson, they came up there to the hospital with my son-in-law, led him up there, and they all anointed me with oil and prayed over me. And I remember, you know, I was really sick at that time, and they had me drugged up, but I never will forget them praying over me. I don't remember a lot of stuff happened before or after that, but I remember them coming in and praying over me. I had the surgery. They tried to put antibiotics in me for a week before they did the surgery, and then they cut me from about the middle of my back all the way down to my behind. And that process of healing from that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And I never will forget, I had a meltdown when I was so I stayed 2 weeks in the hospital, and then they put me in a rehab for 2 weeks. And I remember it was like the 3rd day, I was having a pity party. I just wanted to die. And I was telling God, I want to die. I don't want to live more. I don't want to just pain. Everybody would be in a wheelchair, and they'd set us in a circle. And I was sitting there just feeling sorry for myself, and I looked around, and this young man, they wheeled him up there, and he had a cast from his toe to his hip, and this one went halfway down his leg, and then he had cuts where they'd cut him open all the way to his toes on both sides. And God taps me, and he goes, "Hey, you need to pick your head up, because it could be a lot worse." August the 5th, I have a picture of those MRIs side by side. And the first picture, I have the tumor, and the second picture, I don't. So I call August the 5th my new birthday, because God gave me another life, another chance.